What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York invading California for NAMM 2019, and we return with film director Bob Nalbandian. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, Alex. Always appreciate your support, and always great to do something with you.
Yeah. Last year when we spoke, we were promoting the rise of LA thrash, and now you got Band versus Brand out. Let's just give a rundown on how the making of this film was.
Oh, well, it was, this movie is coming out on Cleopatra Entertainment on February 12th. And basically, it just kind of came together. It was kind of funny. I met with Brian Pereira, the owner of Cleopatra, and we were at his offices. And we were talking about doing a movie together because he was a big fan of the Inside Metal titles. And we were talking about, this was a couple years ago at the time, I think, with Bobby Blotzer and doing the whole rat thing. And we were kind of joking about how all these 80s bands are, going out with one member, Quiet Riot and Frankie Banali. And he goes, man, that would be an interesting topic to do a documentary. Would you want to do something like that? I said, yeah. I said, that's, obviously a hot topic. Everyone's talking about it. You got the classic, rock bands that, Journeys, Foreigners going out with one or sometimes no original members. And now the 80s band's doing it. It's a big thing going on. So I said, yeah, I would love to do something like that. So, it came together that quick. It's like, all right, let's do it. We'll get it together, and boom.
Sounds very organic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was a fun project.
Yeah. Now, one question I really wanted to ask you, I was actually kicking myself because I forgot to ask this last year. But you make music about metal, and I know you were very involved in the metal scene. Like, you introduced Marty Friedman to Megadeth, and you were involved. So it's fair to say that the movies that you make, it's something you identify with on a personal level. That has to make it a little bit easier, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I grew up. I'm 54 years old now. I literally grew up with hard rock and metal, Zeppelin, Sabbath, Purple. I mean, I had an older cousin that turned me on to metal when I was like, 8 years old. So, and ever since, I just loved the heavy stuff, And growing up in LA, Orange County, LA, I was fortunate to see all the bands rise up. I saw Metallica's first show at a small club called Radio City, saw all their early shows, the earliest shows of Armored Saint, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, all their first shows when they were, first started playing, as well as Slayer, when Slayer were a cover band. So I saw all these bands develop up from that, and I was fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time, but I was always a fan, and it was always a passion. And so doing, the Inside Metal series and doing this new movie, Band vs. Brand, it was just kind of, I knew all these guys. It was kind of in my blood. It was something that I wanted to expose. And, even a Band vs. Brand is about branding in the music business in general, but we focus more on the, classic hard rock and metal stuff, because I think that's where it's affected, it the most within that genre. So, it was fun, and it's something that I have a passionate to do, and I love promoting, the metal scene.
As somebody who makes movies about music, do you have to kind of put yourself in the mind of a musician, or in the end, just there's a certain art to film directing that, like, always, regardless of what you're making, that's what it's about?
That's a great question, because, with documentaries, doing the Inside Metal was my beginning of doing documentaries, and I try to give it a real honest approach. And the funny thing is, like with Band vs. Brand, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, it's about how bad the branding is and how bad. It's like, no, it's everyone wants, it's either this way or that. Most documentaries, they have an agenda, to make something look bad, whether it's a political agenda or whatever. They come in with this idea, okay, we're going to make a dieting look bad, make the government look bad, make this, they have this. And that wasn't my agenda at all. It was like, it's for people to think for themselves, they watch it, and it's basically about, this is just what's going on in the music business with branding, and how you have to survive today, and how it's changed and how it's evolved over the years, and how, these classic rock bands, a lot of them are, either dying off or getting in feuds with their other members and stuff, and it's the person that owns the rights to the name carry on. It's just what's going on today, and so I try to take an honest approach. I'm not like leaning toward this is bad or this is good. We talk about the hologram, a lot of stuff in there, very controversial topics in the music business today, but I like to present it as it is, and let the artists kind of give their story. So I don't go in there with, and even with the Inside Metal things, I don't go in there looking for, well, we got to get the biggest names to get the best ratings. And I wasn't looking when I did Band vs. Brand to get, I could have got all the different bands and to have each of them talk shit about each other, said, "Oh, these guys," and I'm sure I would have got a lot more publicity and a lot more in all the news, outlets.
Not necessary.
But yeah, it's like that wasn't my goal. I just, want to present an honest look. And that's kind of always been my goal about the business and what I've done in the past, whether was when I did fanzines back in the day, podcasts or whatever. I look at it as a fan always, but I like to let the audience decide for themselves.
That's awesome. And one other question I'd like to really ask you, being that Slayer announced their farewell, and it's, like, do you think that the music industry is still thriving? Because there's a lot of great thrash bands nowadays, like Power Trip, Ex Mortis.
Just saw them a couple weeks ago.
Ex Mortis, Warbringer,
Yep.
like Havoc, like great new age thrash metal bands. But a lot of people are saying when Slayer goes or when Ozzy goes, like metal will never be the same, or metal will die off. What's your take on the world of modern metal nowadays?
Yeah, it's funny. We're thinking about all the what they call the newer breed of thrash bands, like Warbringer, Ex Mortis, Holy Grail, Havoc, and these bands are already over 10, 15 years old. Some of them, it's like, wow, they're that's longer than Zeppelin has been around. I mean, so they're not really new, So it's funny how these bands have still kind of considered the new breed, which they are. There's so many great bands, and you bring up Power Trip, who I think got it musically and a stage presence wise. I mean, they just look, like you're seeing an '80s thrash metal band from back in the day. I mean, they definitely got it down. I hope so. I hope it gets to the point. I mean, it sure beats the more trendy stuff, the Greta Van Fleets and all that. That's getting a lot of the exposure. There's a lot of great thrash bands, a lot of great, more kind of stoner bands out there, bands. I think a lot of the problem is there's not many bands doing anything really different. I mean, they're doing, the thrash thing well and bringing back that attitude and that style, which I think is great. But I think, sometimes you need like a little twist of something a little bit different. And I think if a band does that, it will definitely carry on. But again, it's not really the bands these days. It's about how people get their music. There's not. Before it was a big thing to release a record and this and that. So now it's all about social media and the clicks and the views and all that. So it's the bands that spend the time to do the social media bullshit and that have the money to promote themselves through that, unfortunately, are the ones that get known. More so than the others. So. It's definitely a different business these days.
Yeah, but you don't think that this genre will die off just because like Slayer does a farewell or something like that?
No, I mean, there'll be bands going around. I mean, it's funny. That's something we talk about in the Band vs. Brand movie. How with the hologram now, all these bands can live on. There was talk about a Lemmy hologram. It's like. There aren't a lot of these classic arena rock bands around anymore, and. I know there's bands like Ghost that are doing really well. They're actually playing arenas now, and hopefully a Power Trip will get to that level. There's some great bands out there, but I think it just takes a lot for people to start going out to shows more and start supporting live music. That's what it's about. Don't just sit in your bedroom and watch this stuff. The way technology's going, they're making it easy. They're saying, sooner or later with a hologram, you'll be able to get, the band live in your bedroom, performing.
Yeah, well, nothing will ever beat having a sweaty guy just tackle you in the mosh pit.
Absolutely, man. That's what it's all about. And I think it'll live on. I mean, there's, Maiden are still very vibrant. They're going to go on, I think, at least another 10 years. Metallica, too. Slayer, they announced their farewell, but they're going to stretch it out for at least 3 years. Yeah. Megadeth is going strong. I mean, Dave Mustaine is sounding better than ever. And there's still, the older 80s thrash bands, you look at Megadeth, Metallica, Testament, Death Angel, they're still releasing killer records today, Slayer. I mean, they're still vibrant. And I think a big problem with a lot of these bands, they know that records don't sell anymore, so they'll just put out like a mediocre record or reissue a record, and they're real lazy about it, and they don't put in the integrity into a new record, and understandably so, because you don't get, you're not going to make money off a record. They just do it as an excuse to go out and tour. But you got a lot of these thrash bands that are putting out Anthrax, putting out some of their last few records were some of their best ever, and I think that too is what it's going to take is consistency. It might take a little longer. You might not make as much money, obviously, with the records, but I think, with a hard rock and metal community, you're going to get the respect, and that's what's going to bring longevity in the long run.
Awesome. Well, Bob, always
Alex,
great to have you.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Everybody, Bob Nalbandian, be sure to check out Band vs. Brand if you haven't already. Rise of LA Thrash and just everything else. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York, everybody.
All right, man.